The information provided on this podcast is for general informational purposes only and is not intended as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your qualified health provider with any questions you may have. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard on this podcast. Reliance on any information provided here is solely at your own risk.
Welcome. This is Birth, Baby. Your hosts are Ciarra Morgan and Samantha Kelly. Ciarra is a birth doula, hypnobirthing educator, and pediatric sleep consultant.
Samantha is a birth doula, childbirth educator, and lactation counselor. Join us as we guide you through your options for your pregnancy, birth, and postpartum journey. Thank you to our listeners for your continued support. If you enjoy our content, please be sure to like, follow, rate, and review wherever you listen to podcasts. This helps us gain visibility to other people that could benefit from listening in. Hey everyone, today we have a little bit of a different birth story for you. So we do a birth story every month, but this month, this is actually Sam's idea, which I love it, is we're going to tell you some of the birth stories from our perspective. We're not going to go into too many details, but just some of the wild and crazy and silly and whatever things we have come across. So we're probably going to do more than one of these, but we're going to share a few with you today. Do you want to start, Sam?
Yeah. I'm excited for this because I think as a doula, I think it's just kind of cool to hear other doulas' birth stories. And as someone who hired a doula, I wanted my doula to tell me all of the crazy stories all the time. So I think this is going to be really fun.
She probably didn't want to. She was like, I don't want to scare you.
Exactly. But for me,
by the way, doulas are not bound by HIPAA. So, and we're not telling anyone's names in these or any identifying information. No, these are just fun stories.
Yeah. So I'll kick us off. When I first started as a doula, I had a client hire me. And it was when I was offering, it was like one of my first couple of clients as a certifying birth. So I offered a discount on that birth, which meant that it was going to be the longest birth known to man. And it was. So this client was planning to deliver out of hospital at a birthing center. And they went into labor. I went and labored with them at home when things were starting to feel more intense. We got to the birth center, like 1 centimeter. It was crazy. And then so they gave them some medication so that they could go home and rest. They went home and rested. I went home and rested. They called me back the next day at like 4 a.m. Things had ramped back up again. We got back to the birth center. Same story again. She was, I think, maybe 2 centimeters at that point. And so I was like, I think there's something funny going on here. So we went back to their place, started working through some different things, did some mile circuits, did like just some other random things. And remember, this is one of my first births, so I didn't really know a whole lot. So I'm kind of like texting all of my doula friends, being like, what would you do here? So I'm getting ideas from the doula collective on things to try. And
I call that the hive mind.
Exactly.
Like, I need the hive mind. I'm tired and I need to like pull in all of the knowledge from the other doulas that aren't as tired as I am.
Exactly. And I was so tired. I was like, this, we can't keep doing this. So we did that for a while. I went home and rested for a while. Eventually we make it back to the birth center. Finally, 6 centimeters. We're starting to like make some progress, but this client is having a ton of back labor. And so I felt like there must be something going on with the position. And the midwives kept saying, no, I think baby looks like baby's in the right position. As far as I can feel, everything feels fine. But in my mind, I was like, I think something is wrong. But I didn't know a whole lot about spinning babies at that point. I thought that we had to know for sure that baby was, in a bad position before we started doing the things. So I didn't do the things. So we ended up transferring to the hospital when this client was like 8 centimeters or something, which transferring at that point can be a little bit dicey because it could be that we get up and move and then we have a baby in the car. So the midwife was going to follow us.
A bump just jiggles the baby down.
Oh, yeah. So the midwife was going to follow us to the hospital. Dad had left mom's wallet at their apartment. So he was going to drive home, which is something I would never do again, but he was going to drive home to go get her wallet. I was going to drive her to the hospital. So she gets in my car. We have everything like Chuck's pads everywhere to make, in case like her water's released all over my car or something. So we got all these things. We're driving to the hospital. We get to the hospital. And fun fact, if you show up in the ER at a hospital in labor, they will lose their marbles. Like the ER staff, they're terrified of pregnant people. They do not want to catch your baby. So straight up, they put this mom in a wheelchair and the med tech is like running her down the hall. She's fine. She's straight chilling, y'all. Like she and I are
What an
laughing
impressive
at this
mom.
guy. Oh my God, she was amazing. Like having waves every like 2 to 3 minutes, but had been stuck at 8 centimeters for like 4 hours or something crazy. So like we knew baby was not going to come flying out, as much as we can know. But anyways, med tech is flying us down the hall. We get into labor and delivery and the nurses are like laughing at this whole experience with the med tech. It was fine. And then we get in, she gets an epidural. We have some sleep finally. I'd been with her like 72 hours at that point. Everybody got some sleep. I'm sleeping like straight up in a chair. Dad's sleeping on a couch. She's zonked out in the bed finally. And then we finally get to start pushing. And we push for 4 hours before the provider came in and offered to use a vacuum to assist with delivery. And at that point, we're like, anything to get this baby out of this sweet mama. Baby comes out straight OP, straight occiput posterior, which means that normally when babies come out, they're facing down. So you see the back of their head as the birthing person. This baby came straight up looking at his mama. And
That's
it
what
was
my daughter did.
oh my gosh, that's such a stinker move, you guys. Those babies, that's so rude. But
It's so rude.
it was great. And everyone was so impressed with her because this was her first baby. OP is a difficult way to deliver, especially a first baby. It was amazing. It was totally wild. But because that was one of my certifying births, I didn't feel like I could call a backup. So I was with her for 72 hours total. And I think I probably got 6 hours of sleep.
Yeah, you had like one tiny little spot where you went home to rest, but that hardly counts because it's like you're like in this fog, you're barely asleep because you know at any second you could be called and woken up again.
Yeah, it was wild. It was so wild.
So I was actually going to tell a different one, but now I have one that mirrors yours a little bit. And so I'm like, I'm going to tell mine that was a little bit wild because there are a couple of things that are very similar in it. So that was one before you worked with me, before we worked together. Mm-hmm. And mine is also one from before we worked together. So I had a family hire me. Dad had already had children from a previous relationship. This was mom's first baby. They were like such a sweet couple. I did hypnobirthing classes in their home for them. We did like private hypnobirthing classes. We got really close. Like it was really nice. And, 41 weeks comes along, which is fine. I'm like, remember, we are fine. This is how it goes. First time moms, like most of the time you're going to go over 41 weeks anyway. It's not a big deal. But then dad comes down with COVID. And we're like, no. And this was in 2022. So it's not where everyone's panicking, but it's still like, bro, you can't come to the birthing center. So she knew her husband wasn't going to be able to come if she went into labor. So what'd her body do? Sealed up. It's like, I'm not having a baby. So we knew that her mom was going to join us in labor whenever she had the baby. But now he has COVID and her body's like, I don't think so. So she texts me and she's like really emotional. It's like 41 weeks, 4 days or something. And she knew at 42 weeks, she's going to have to transfer to the hospital and get an induction. Or like she was okay with that. Obviously, you don't have to, but whatever. Anyways, doula talk. So I did a fear release for her. We sat on the phone, actually on Zoom. She cried. Like I did a fear release for her. Like we're going to have this baby with or without COVID. Like we have to. And he's now isolated in their RV that's in their front yard. So like he's not even living in the house because he doesn't want to get her sick, right? So 41 weeks, 6 days comes. And the birthing center is like, look, we could Hail Mary pass and try to artificially rupture your membrane, so break your water for you, see if that new cascade of hormones helps. And we can do herbs and pumping at the same time. Like try to get this thing rocking if you want to try. And she's like, I do want to try. And dad is still very sick. So she goes to the birthing center. Her mom goes with her. they start doing some of these things. Obviously, she doesn't need me yet, but I'm giving a little bit of like virtual support and we're talking on the phone occasionally. And she calls me and she's like, Ciarra, it's working. Like I'm getting waves every 4 to 5 minutes. This is great. I'm like, oh my God, that's amazing. So she keeps on trucking. She's like, okay, this is labor. Like, I think I need you now. And because her husband wasn't able to be there, and I knew that her mom was not her like comfort person, she was letting her be there, but it still wasn't like the closest relationship with that kind of thing. I went earlier than I usually would.
Right.
So I go and we're hanging out. Everything's going really well. She's doing beautifully. I'm moving an iPad around the room with us so that dad can be wherever we are. Like we have pictures of her in the tub and he's at the end of the tub, like near the candles in the iPad. And he's watching the whole, like the whole thing. He was so involved. He's like talking to her. Like, it was so hard. Yeah. And he's like still being present. It was like very, very sweet. He's like coughing and muting, you know, so that he can blow his nose. Still living in the RV. And we get to 10 centimeters. And now this was long, like it's probably like 24 hours at this point. We're to 10 centimeters. We're pushing. I'm texting Samantha because we're pushing for a very long time. Waves have spaced out to like 6, 7, 8 minutes apart. So we can only push every so often. And I'm like, Samantha, I'm exhausted. I don't know what to do. My brain doesn't work anymore. I need hive mind. Like, what do I do? Because Samantha's always been amazing with positioning and all of these things, even though I was spinning babies trained and we're doing all the things, but I just couldn't think anymore. And you sent me a picture of some putting a sheet over a door and closing it.
I can see it in my head.
Yeah. And so we like tie a knot in the end of the sheet. We close the door. She was like, Ciarra, I will do anything. I was like, all right, game on, let's go. So she's squatting down, pulling against this rope of a sheet and pushing. Y'all, I think we pushed for like 5 or 6 hours. And because we were only pushing every 8 or so minutes, they're kind of letting us push for a longer amount of time than they usually would. And finally she looks around, she's like, y'all, like, what are we doing? I'm like, I don't know. Like, I'm out of it too. I'm out of ideas. And her midwife was like, I think we're there. I think it's probably time to transfer. So she's like, yeah. Well, we didn't even get to go to the hospital we wanted to go to. We knew the whole time we wouldn't get to go to the one because her insurance doesn't take that hospital that we would like to transfer to. So we had to go to a hospital we didn't want to transfer to. And we're getting ready to transfer. We're packing up her bags. Her mom's helping pack everything. And she looks at me and she's like, can I please go in your car? I don't want to drive with my mom. And I was like, I don't usually do that. Like, so again, I'm driving her like you did when that's not something we normally do. That's the only time I've ever done that. Was it yours?
Yeah. No, that's not true. I had one other time that I drove someone.
Okay. But rare. And so I was like, okay, but like, you're going to have to deal. I'm a mom. Like, you're going to have to deal with the goldfish and gross stuff in the back of my van. She's like, that's fine. I just don't want to be in my mom's car. I was like, okay. So she literally crawls into my van on hands and knees. She has a Chuck's pad under her. And she basically sits on hands and knees the whole way I'm driving her to the hospital. We get,
by the way, for anyone listening, when you're transferring from a birth center and you are like that far along, they always give you the option. Like they tell you, hey, our recommendation would be that we call for an ambulance to transfer. A lot of people, especially if it's something like that, where you've been stuck for a long time and you're pretty sure you're not going to have a baby, but if you did, it would be okay. They'll choose to just self-transfer rather than have the ambulance come and deal with those bills. But just a little background to that story, because I feel like both of us are sharing that and people are like, am I supposed to drive myself to the hospital? No.
Totally true. Yes. And yeah, it's the bills. Like why, she's like, we're not emergent. We're just chilling. Like what the heck is this baby doing? So we get there. The plan was get an epidural, maybe get a little bit of Pitocin to see if the Pitocin would strengthen the waves. Like she didn't feel like she needed an epidural, but she's like, let's do it. All the things. So we do. And they kept pushing us. They really didn't want anything to be done. They're like, this is long enough. We're now over 42 weeks because we started all of this on 41 and 6. Yeah. So it's like the evening of 42 weeks and they were over us. This hospital was not, they're very irritated with me thinking that I'm the one encouraging all of this, like as if I'm making the rules or decisions. So the baby's heart rate does not love Pitocin. And we just start seeing all these signs and she looks at me and we have dad on the iPad and we're all talking, and me and grandma, I think, left the room so that iPad and mom could talk. And we're just like, look, like it's time. I think that, and she just made the call. She was like, let's stop trying. This baby's telling us something. Let's have a cesarean. So
Yeah.
we go into the OR. This hospital does not usually let doulas in the OR, but they did let me in, which I was really, really happy that they did, especially in this case. And I did have dad on the phone the whole time. And then baby's born, and the mom wanted skin to skin. And when she was like very much shaky, pretty nauseous, like, but the shaking was just a lot for her. And that's a normal
Yeah.
reaction that a lot of people have. It's an adrenaline rush, plus all of the medications running through your body, plus she's
When you're so
exhausted.
tired. Yeah.
Yeah. So her mom is sitting right next to her, and I'm standing next to them. She's where a dad usually would be, or another partner. And I was like, do you want to do skin to skin? Like, baby's here. Like, do you want? And she's looking at me and she's like, I do, but, and she looks at me and she goes, I can't. And then she said, will you? Like, I'm going to get teary just saying that. Like, that was the most incredible, like, offer or ask that I've ever been asked. And she goes, will you do skin to skin with her? And I was looking at grandma like, oh my God, I think grandma might kill me if I'm the one that does skin to skin with this baby. And also, you guys, a lot of hospitals even give dad crap if they want to do skin to skin in the OR. They're kind of like mom or nothing, or birthing person or nothing. But I think because everything was just so wild, at this hospital specifically, what we did was, I can't imagine it being replicated. But
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, I will. And the grandma was like, I just want to take care of my daughter. Like, that's her baby, you know? And so she's sitting there making sure she's not too nauseous, or like helping her hold a bag, or helping her like stay calm. And I unzipped my bunny suit, because they have us in those white bunny, suits for the OR. And I lifted up my shirt and I put this sweet little baby on my stomach. And we just sat there and did skin to skin in the OR while mom got closed up. And that will always be such an incredibly like special moment for me and birth for me. We were all so tired, and to be asked to do something so intimate and special. I was more present being skin to skin with that baby than I was with my own babies after birth, because I was, dealing with all of the afterbirth hormones myself with my kids. So it was just really incredible. And I think the most impressive thing about this whole story is all of that sounds like that would create trauma. Like, you did all the things and you think you did everything right, and your husband didn't get to be there, and you didn't even do skin to skin with your own baby. Like, you could angle this in a way that's super negative, but this mom has no trauma from this birth. She was like, Ciarra, we did all the things. I'm like, I know. Like, I'm glad you agree, because I think so too. And I'm still friends with them on Facebook, and they send me pictures, and she tags me in mom groups all the time, like recommending hypnobirthing. Like, she's like, it worked for me. I know I didn't have a vaginal birth, but it still worked for me. I used those techniques throughout. I used them in my C-section, and that support made all of the difference, having a doula and all those things. So anyway, that was my story.
I love it. I love it so much. It's just like, I don't know. It's just so cool. What we do is so cool.
Mm-hmm. It
It's
really
crazy.
is. Like,
It's really cool.
it never gets old, or I'm never jaded to the fact that we are allowed in one of the most intimate and vulnerable moments of somebody's life, and that they trust us to be there.
Yeah.
Will never go past me. Like, it will always be very present in my heart.
Yeah. It's awesome. It's amazing. To finish us up here, let's both give a couple of our like crazy stats. So what is the like shortest amount of time that you have been with someone before they delivered? Like, you arrive at the birth, they haven't delivered yet, because we've both had babies who have beat us there, but haven't delivered yet, and then baby.
I think it was like not even 2 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And Peggy actually, sorry, well, we've said her name on the podcast before. Peggy was like my interim, because I was resting from a birth.
Mm-hmm.
And it was actually when we had like the snowpocalypse here in Austin. And it was the Friday of the snowpocalypse when I had twins. And I was with them for a long time. And then I didn't even go all the way home. I went to my mom's house because I was so tired. And I slept for like an hour. And I got a call that another mom was in labor. And I was like, there's no way. Like, I'm dead to the world. I cannot safely drive. So I passed it along to Peggy. because she lived close to that hospital that they were going to be going to, same one I was just at. And I was like, can you please go? I don't think I can do it. Or can you communicate with them? I don't think I can do it. And so she did. And then she was like, Ciarra, we got to go. Like, she's a multip. This is her second baby. And it sounds like things are moving fast. And I was like, okay. So she was going, but I was like, I'm going to go, whatever. I'm like awake now. My adrenaline's going. So I went. She had been there maybe like 20 minutes. I got there and they were pushing. And we were both in there. We just didn't leave. And she didn't leave. She was like, whatever, I'm here now. And it was not even 2 minutes until that baby was born.
Oh my gosh, I love it so much. Yeah, I had a similar one. It was the first birth was really long. And so she didn't think that her second birth was going to be that short. And they called me and told me that they were starting to have some contractions. They sounded pretty chill, but like you could tell that she was starting to feel a little bit like scared that things were going to take a long time again. And then I checked my phone 20 minutes later. This is at like 5 a.m. I checked my phone 20 minutes later. They were on their way to the hospital. Hadn't called to tell me they were on their way to the hospital. And I said, okay, I'm coming to meet you. So I get to the hospital. I'm going up to the doors. And at this hospital, there's like doors that block off the labor and delivery rooms, but the labor and delivery rooms are like right by the doors. So I get buzzed in. And as I'm like waiting to get buzzed in, I hear I see commotion, people like running in and out of rooms. I hear someone like giving birth. And I was like, oh no, that's mine. That's mine. Oh no. And so
that's mine. I know that yell. I was at her last birth.
And I went like running in and I came in the room right as baby was. I think I like got next to her head and was like, hey, and then we had a baby.
So fun. Like, and what's great is those clients are not upset. Like, no, it's not like they can be mad. They're just, wow, okay, I had a crazy fast birth.
Yeah.
Especially when the first one was long. It's extra surprising. This is so fun. This was a great idea that you had, and we've got to do this again, like every few months, maybe. Yeah, and like I have so many more I want to tell, but let's keep it short. Let's tease it. Maybe you guys let us know what you think. Did you like this episode? Do you want to hear more of these? And if you ever have a birth story you want to tell on our podcast, you can email us at birthbabypodcast@gmail.com and we can talk about having you on.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for joining us on Birth Baby. Thanks again to Longing for Orpheus for our music. You can look him up on Spotify. Remember to leave a review, share, and follow wherever you get your podcasts. See you next week.